Working Cows Podcast, episode 230.
Welcome to the podcast that gives producers a platform to discuss and share paradigm-challenging practices. Practices that have increased the effectiveness of their operation and the joy that their families have received from this lifestyle.
Howdy, everybody. This is Clay Connery, host of the Working Cows Podcast, powered by the Global Ag Network, here with another episode for you. Very excited to be joined today by Brad Kruse. Brad is from Wisconsin, and been in touch with him over quite a bit over the recent months and talking to him about their operation. And he sent me this message. There aren't a lot of big pastures in Wisconsin, and the sheep is hard to get into because of the need for woven wire fencing, but he's realizing that their Honeybee enterprise gives him the least stress and has the most potential to grow profitably without significant overheads, and heard others talk about their Honeybee enterprise being the most profitable for the amount of labor put into it and those kinds of things, and never talked to anybody about bees and what goes into that business. So decided I would give Brad a shout and talk to him a little bit about his Honeybee enterprise and what goes into that. So, Brad, thanks for joining me today on the Working Cows Podcast.
No problem. It's an honor to be here.
We've been in contact through social media platforms and some of that, and have some common interests, I guess, with sheep and some of those things. And I guess I've got a little bit of an exposure to what agriculture is like there in Wisconsin, or a little bit of exposure to what Wisconsin is like, and very little exposure to what agriculture is like in Wisconsin. So could you give me a little bit of your perspective on agriculture and what it's like there in Wisconsin, and how you are currently involved in it, maybe how you've been involved in it in the past, and some of those things?
Okay. Yeah, we're in Southwest Wisconsin, I describe it as, and we're in the driftless area, so we've got a lot of hills, and it's probably a third woods and 50% cropland, and maybe a little pasture here or there in between. Grew up on a dairy farm, and I vividly remember when I was about 9, Mom and Dad came to me and asked me if I wanted to farm when I got older, and it was just a night and day clear yes. And so at that point in 1999, Mom and Dad expanded the cow herd. Things went pretty well for a few years, but then the later 2006 through 2008 were pretty rough years on dairy, and ultimately our family got out of the dairy business, and just been trying to find our niche to stay in farming and stay in the game. Because there's nothing I've ever wanted to do more than farming, I guess.
Sure. And would you say that are there some beef operations in your neighborhood or in Southwest Wisconsin, or is it mostly dairy and other kinds of operations, crop operations, I guess? But
I would say, for the most part, beef in our neighborhood is more of a hobby. It's there's not a lot of huge beef farmers around, and even by that statement, huge is probably anything over 50 mama cows in our neighborhood. And even the dairy has really kind of gone away in our neighborhood. Our county, in the early 90s, there was just dairy everywhere, and it's not really that big anymore. It's a lot of corn and soybeans now. I know I've struggled in finding pastures that would host more than 10 beef cows at a time, and that's really kind of what led me away to look away from the beef entity, just because trying to run cows on 7 different pastures is nothing but a headache and just asking for problems. There's too many opportunities to have cows out on neighbors you don't know, and it's stress.
Sure. So, I spent the last better part of last week with Steve Kenyon. He was here for the South Dakota Soil Health Coalition conference, and then I was his taxi across the state to the Farm Bureau Young Farmers and Ranchers Farm and Ranch Conference. And he talks a lot about the place where he lives is called the Gray Wooded Soils area of northern Alberta. And basically it's a place that was covered by trees at one time. And then they went through, and every quarter basically that's opened up for agriculture, they have bulldozed all the trees out of there and made it open and useful for now. A lot of that better soil is getting converted to cropland. And, of course, as corn hits $6 a bushel and those things, the competition, they don't have a lot of corn up there, but the grain prices in the States tend to affect grain markets in Canada. And so the competition becomes more intense for those quarters that have been bulldozed in the past. Is that similar to what's happened in Wisconsin? Are there natural places where there aren't trees, or was there traditionally a lot of trees and then those trees were removed?
I would say in this part of the state, there's not a lot of land clearing going on. We're in the hilly country, so basically if it's flat enough to farm, it's always been farmed. But I will say about, the high corn prices of 2012, really took out anything that was pasture that was flat enough to farm without serious erosion. But there's, like I say, the bigger pastures are few and far between.
Yeah, and I suppose those corn acres have stayed in row crops anyways, probably, right?
Yeah, I think landlords see a lot less risk involved in just having someone come one day a year to plant the corn and one day a year to combine the corn, and there's a lot less stress than having to worry about cows every day of the month. But
and so when your family got out of dairy in 2008, did you go straight into beef, or what was the transition there like?
So I was at an off-farm job at that point. And I guess I started with butcher pigs, direct marketing. Butcher pigs was pretty easy. A lot of families can afford at least half a pig, whereas a half of a cow is a substantial amount of money for most people. So to me, my easy ticket in was selling butcher pigs because it was pretty easy sale. And eventually I developed the passion to want to get into beef cattle a little more. And I think that was only about 3 years ago. I got myself a beef herd put together, and at that point I started to obsess with watching the Ranching for Profit videos while I was driving truck. Well, I shouldn't say watching, listening. I'd listen to them while I drove, and it kind of got to the point where I couldn't stand to listen to them anymore. I basically had them memorized, and so I made the decision then that I should go to Ranching for Profit, and I did. And because I didn't have any excuse not to go, and came home, fixed a few things, tried to sell some overhead assets and focus a little more on the production side. But ultimately with the cows, the limiting factor was I can't find substantial size pastures around here. So Ranching for Profit really opened my eyes to the sheep process or concept. Grazing solar panels and getting paid to do it just blew my mind when I first heard about that. And we've got some solar farms going in our area that at some point I'd like to get in on, but for now we're just focusing on the meat portion of that. But even with the sheep, we ran into the issue where woven wire fence is not a common thing on pasture here. And, it's $1 a foot to build woven wire fence. And when you don't have a long-term lease commitment, that's another hard thing to justify. So we've actually found we started doing honeybees 3 years ago, and I'm really enjoying that. It's really low stress, and it's just the entire opposite spectrum when it comes to agriculture. With crop farming, you're bidding against all the neighbors on places to plant crops. With pasture, you're against everybody else in the area to get your hands on leases. It's a high competition thing. Whereas with the bees, I almost have people fighting over who gets my honeybees on their land. It's just completely different. I could buy as many hives as I want almost and find homes for them. And the honeybees are a little bit different practice too. I could take a week off and nobody cares. Nobody don't have to worry about someone doing chores while I'm not around. It's the winter off. I mean, it's a completely different kind of agriculture, and I'm really enjoying it.
Sure.
We were out to California here 2 weeks ago, working our bees in the almond groves. They go out there in the winter for pollination, and it works out pretty good for us.
Yeah. So I definitely want to kind of drill down on that bee idea. But I know you guys got some other enterprises going on. You guys have gotten into, is it Katahdin and Dorper sheep? Is that what you're still running?
Yeah, we're mainly Katahdin, I would say, but I do have not a passion, but the black hair sheep. I don't know if that's a Katahdin cross or what it is, but they really look sharp to me, and I've tried to focus a little more towards those. But yeah, we have about 80 head of mama ewes, and we're lambing some right now. Ideally, I'd lamb in summer, but we're trying to build a herd from scratch. Last spring, I had gotten a loan to expand our sheep herd, and by the time the loan came through, there was no sheep to buy, no ewes to buy. So I've kind of been building a sale barn herd, and I know a lot of people would object to that or be nervous about doing that, but it's worked out really well for us.
Sure. Do you think there's any important keys to success in buying out of the sale barn? Or are there certain things that you're able to see or look for that are helping that work out well?
Not especially, I guess. I don't know of anything specific, I guess. Just try and give it your best judgment. And if you find something later on that is a red flag to you, you can always take her back. Right.
I was going to say, I think part of the success of a sale barn herd is a lack of sentimental connection to the animal and willingness to just send it on down the road if it's not something that's going to fit what you guys are trying to do.
Okay, so I had said that we couldn't find any animals to buy initially when we got the funding. So that kind of changed our plan. We bought about 300 stocker lambs, and we were going to keep all the ewes out of those to make a herd. And the stocker enterprise on that went actually not too bad. There was some death loss, but I think we ended up making like 25 cents per day per head. And I guess I wouldn't hesitate to do it again, but it didn't really pan out as far as getting breeding ewes out of that situation. They didn't fill out like I would have expected for that situation, or didn't grow up fast enough for my liking, whatever you want to say. But so I started picking up some cull ewes at the sales as I was going to them, and I've been much, much more satisfied with that avenue, and it's working for us.
Sure. I assume that the cropland in your part of the world is similar to the cropland in my part of the world, in that there's no fences around it and no opportunity to put, livestock, be they sheep or cows, out on that cropland when it's not being, or maybe on a cover crop or on something like that. Is there some opportunity like that, or have you guys been able to capitalize on anything like that?
It's pretty limited here to graze residues. I've put ads on Craigslist looking for stalks to graze and haven't had any luck. It's just not a common thing around here. Everybody's scared of compaction or your animals getting out, or their first excuse is, oh, well, I don't have fence. Well, a hot wire isn't too hard to throw up and get going. But if you go about 50 miles south of me, you start to see stalk grazing. But like I say, it's a hard deal to get through landlords' heads here, I guess, is the statement. I mean, my own brother last year had 50 acres of cover crop that he just left in the field and wouldn't let me graze because he didn't want the compaction. Well, it was literally across the road from where I was feeding hay, and it sucked to have to look at that every day and know you couldn't have it. But
so same thing you hear everywhere, right? As the compaction issue. I just shared a picture from a no-till on the plains, that was comparing the pounds per square foot or pounds per square inch of a tractor tire loaded with corn or a grain cart loaded with corn versus a 1,300 pound cow, and it was less than half pounds per square inch for the cow hoof. But of course, the trailing back and forth is something that you've got to figure out how to keep them from doing. But still, it's not a I think it's just one of those. It's a myth, maybe an excuse, because like you said, being able to not having to worry about fence, not having to worry about cows, not having to worry about water, those are all things that I guess the guy trying to sell a farmer on the idea of letting him graze some residue, those are all hurdles they have to overcome.
Yeah.
So what drew you to butcher pigs? You talked about butcher pigs. Was there any kind of a soil health or any kind of a influence in that direction that drew you to it? I mean, other than, like you said, the affordability of a half a hog compared to half a beef, was there any kind of any influences there from the world that we might think of as far as people that are doing the direct marketing of pigs that drew you to it?
At this point, I honestly probably couldn't even tell you what got me on the pigs, but might have just been something different or something new to try. I was doing a few Holstein beef cattle at that point, and if you've ever worked with Holsteins, they're born with just a passion to find a place to die. But and they don't fill out on grass whatsoever. I know once I got my first set of beef, I think they were Herefords. It was just night and day, and I'll never buy a Holstein again. But I honestly couldn't tell you what drew me into the pork side of things.
Then you mentioned that you guys got into bees, and that's Gabe Brown said a long time ago on the Working Cows podcast that bees are their most profitable enterprise on I think maybe per unit of labor. I'm not sure per acre necessarily, but on a per unit of labor basis, bees are their most profitable enterprise. And all this time later, still have never done an episode looking at bees and looking at the opportunities that they present. So I guess kind of walk me through the life cycle of a bee, so to speak, and what it takes to get into it and some of those things.
Well, I would maybe back up a little bit. I think Gabe Brown has a beekeeper on his property, and then he markets the honey that beekeeper produces. So Gabe's kind of got a bit of a hands-off approach on the deal.
Sure.
But yeah, he's found a way to make it work for him. I mean, when you do the marketing, you're getting a pretty substantial cut of the deal. But as far as honeybees go, I mean, we get them home from California in about mid-April here, and that is a hive that's 2 boxes tall. And the first thing I do is I cut that hive down to 4. I split it 4 ways roughly, depending on their strength, and I'll purchase some queens to make more colonies. And then so you get a pretty good dandelion flow in late April here, and that really gets the bees awake for the spring and really gets them drawing some comb. But basically April and May are build up months to get them up to a full honey production hive. And then May, June, and July or I guess June and July are more your honey production months. And then before you know it, you're in August, September, which is kind of your start preparing for winter and get them back on the road again. There is definitely a lot of work involved in the bees. It's not just put the hives out and come back in a few months for honey. We go out and go through every hive about every 2 to 3 weeks.
And what are you looking for when you're going through the hives?
The first thing is reproduction. You got to see that they're queen right. And then I guess the second aspect we look at is the amount of space they have, or if they need more space, and how they're doing on feed. We do feed corn syrup and pollen patties in the spring to give them a boost and get them up and going. But and then after that, we treat for mites about 3 times a year. At this point, if you're beekeeping and not treating for mites, you might as well expect to buy new bees every year. It's just part of the game at this point.
So a couple of things that you referenced in passing there. You said that you're checking on or you're splitting it into a certain number of hives depending on strength. Is that what do you mean by strength? What makes a strong bee hive or box?
Population? When you open the lid, how many bees is it that you see?
And how many bees are there in a box?
Oh gosh. That's a question I should know the answer to. I feel like I better not answer that. I can't give you the honest, an educated statement there. I know I've heard the number before, but.
Yep. So how do you know when it's time to split then?
Okay. So we run 10 frame boxes. And so when you open the lid, the number of frames that the cluster of bees is on kind of gives you the reference. So like in almonds in California, we have to meet a 6 frame minimum and 8 frame average on the bees. And so when they pop that lid, they count how many frames the bees are on. And if it's under 6 frames, you don't get paid.
How many acres can a box service?
Okay, so we put about 25 hives on a bee yard. You can do up to 50 in the right situation, but we just go for about 25. 35 is about the upper end of where I'd ever want to go. But and we put a bee yard about every other mile, so 2 miles apart. And for me that works pretty well because I try and pair bee yards with where I have cattle because I'm already going out to check on the cows anyway. I might as well check on my bees while I'm there anyway as well, and kind of establish a route between the beef cattle and what we have for crops, and then slide a few friends and family in between that want bees on their land.
Are you selecting certain places as this is a better place for a bee than another place next door, or how are you thinking about those things?
I guess one factor in choosing a bee yard is I like a place that you can't see the bees from the road just for privacy and security, I guess. I don't want anybody out there messing with them, but I have one bee yard that the landowner does do the rotational grazing, and that yard it really hasn't done very well for me yet. And I suspect bees actually don't do real good on red clover because they can't reach the nectar. And those hives in the fall were just packed full of pollen. So I have the suspicion they're flying all around these rotationally grazed pastures, and all they're getting is pollen off the red clover. But
sure. And so they're doing their job pollinating, but since they can't reach the nectar, they're not making honey, right?
Yeah, I mean, the red clover is great for grazing, but for a honey crop, it's not really there. But my understanding for those guys out west, that sagebrush will make a decent flavor of honey. I couldn't say as far as yield goes, but
sure.
If you want a new outlook on weeds, honeybees are a great way to do that, because you suddenly look at these weeds that have a flower on them. It's like, well, I guess you can stay. I have a reason to keep you now.
Right.
But
we had an incredible clover flush here. We get yellow clover, sweet clover, we call it, kind of every other year, sort of, unless it's a drought. But we happened to hit a phenomenal year as far as rainfall. Like we averaged 15 inches. We ended up with 40 that year. And so, I mean, there was places where you could get up on top of a hill and see 60, 70 miles in all directions. And it was just yellow as far as you could see with this incredible clover flush. And there was lots of honey made that summer. And the guys that were in the honey making business in our neighborhood, said it was the best honey they'd ever made, and just pure and clear, and it was phenomenal. Very light in color, but it was a interesting part of that year, among many interesting parts of that year. For us, getting to basically move 500 miles east and get that rainfall like they get, and seeing what it does to the prairie. So talk about some of those things. What's a week in your life look like as a beekeeper? What are you doing? What's your day-to-day look like as far as the bees are concerned?
I guess to start with, the mornings don't start real early because the bees don't really start flying till late morning, 9-10 o'clock. And the ones that go out and do the foraging are the ones that are mean. So them are the ones that sting you up if you get there too early. So you try and get out a little later than breakfast. I don't know. Like I say, we only try and get through the hives about every other week. So we, between all our other enterprises, we really only have to dedicate 1 or 2 days a week to beekeeping at this point. We are looking to expand the enterprise, but yeah, you get the truck loaded up and with spare supplies and tools and stop at each yard. There's different times of the year. In the spring, you're building everything up, and midsummer, you're starting to put honey supers on, and late summer, you're bringing the honey supers back home to extract. So there's not a real blanket answer there, I guess, but
sure. Well, so just walk me through the process. What's it look like when you show up on that 1 or 2 days a week? What are you looking for? What are you doing? Are you adding? You said I think pollen patties and corn syrup. Are you adding those regularly? Is that just to get them started in the spring? What's your
Okay, so when we split them up in the spring, you split them down to a five frame nuke. It's called. It's 5 frames of bees, and so you put that into a 10 frame box right away and try and get them to fill that box. You encourage that. So there's a feeder in the box we fill with corn syrup, and then the pollen patties encourage them to reproduce, make more brood. So we'll feed syrup until they're ready to go to honey, or once they get full of 2 boxes full. But so I guess you pop the lid and you pull out one of the center frames and you look for reproduction. Eggs, or if you see eggs, they had a queen within the last 3 days. If you see larvae, it's in the last week. If you see capped brood, then they had a queen within the last week or 2 weeks. And basically for me, once I establish that they're queen right, close them up and move on. Or if they need more space, add another box or whatever. But I don't get real in depth and look for the queen every single time, because I don't need to see her. All I need to know is that she's there.
Sure. So they're reproducing throughout the season? You kind of laid out in April to the end of July, and then it starts to slow down in August and September, and you're trying to get them shipped west. They're reproducing that whole time and basically filling up those boxes, and you're having to add more frames and more boxes if the frames get full. Is that right?
Yes. Yep. We pull our last honey around September 15th, and then at that point, it's just treat them for mites a few times and then start to feed them again in the fall. And we like to get them on a semi and out of here at Halloween. So they go to California and they just sit in a field until this year we went out in January and went through them once. And about the 1st of February, they get placed in almonds, and they finish up their almond work around the 7th or 10th of March, and we expect them home around the 10th of April.
And is that a pretty easy network to get into as far as finding a place to send them in the summer?
Or sorry, bee yards around the winter.
Yeah.
If you're a sociable person, you make the right friends, I guess is the statement I'll make. Just like anything else, just like a semi load of cattle, it's a lot of cattle to fill a semi by yourself, and it's a lot of money to do that. But if you can team up with a few guys and go in with them, or be the big shot and fill a semi yourself, which is what we're planning to do this fall. This is our 4th season in the honeybees, and we're planning to get to where we can fill our own truck. But
sure.
I don't know. It's, if you're willing to stick your neck out and make connections, you'll find the right people.
Are you getting the honey that they're making while they're in California as well, or is that part of the agreement? It stays there. How does that happen?
The almonds don't produce a crazy amount of honey, really. So nobody really worries about that. They don't actually get the honey supers put on them out there. So they're the almonds actually bloom before they put leaves on the trees. So they're like the first thing in the spring to put flowers on. So the bees are still pretty weak at that point, and they're just trying to get built up. Like I say, they're in a 20 frame box, and when they go into almonds, they need to be a 6 frame minimum. So they got a lot of room to grow during that 30 days, and it takes 21 days for them to go through a reproduction cycle. So if they get placed in almonds the 1st of February, by the 10th of March, they've only been through 1.5 cycles. It's not a lot of time in reality to get them to have those boxes all full.
Sure. So when did they leave Wisconsin?
Halloween.
Okay. And they go right to California from there?
Yeah, ours do anyway. There's some guys that'll drop them off in Texas for a little while, and there's other guys that'll put them in like potato storage sheds in Nevada. And from my understanding, anybody that's east of Wisconsin will ship them to Florida for the winter season down there. But in our situation, what we're doing so far, we're going straight to California with them.
So what are the bees doing from November to March or February?
Basically, they're just on standby or just sit and hold position, I guess. Try and stay alive. There's a fair amount of loss. I mean, with honeybees, there's a fair amount of it that's just out of your hands. But in our recent trip to California here to go through the bees, my personal bees did pretty awesome. I only lost like 8 hives. That was like a 6% loss, which is awesome. A lot of guys will lose 15 to 25%, and some guys will lose 50% or more.
Gotcha.
Like I say, a lot of it's out of your hands, but don't let that scare you away, I guess, is a statement I'll make. But
and bees kind of will work anywhere. I mean, you've got to ship them west or south anyways, right? They've got to go southwest to California, south to Texas, southeast to Florida, depending on where you're at, of course. But you've got to ship them in somewhere for the winter, right? I mean, I know a guy who buys I know a guy who buys new bees every spring, but it's just kind of a hobby deal. So, but you've got to ship them somewhere for the winter.
If you got a head on your shoulders, you ship them somewhere. But I could keep them in Wisconsin. But in my statement on that is by shipping them to California in the spring, I end up with 4 times as many bees, because instead of a 50% loss, I have a 10 to 20% loss. But the colonies come back so much stronger. I mean, they're ready to rock when they come home, because they've been working for a month already.
Yep. So just a heads up, I don't know if Zoom made an update or if I tried to join from 2 different computers and that confused Zoom, but it says it's going to kick us off in 4 minutes. But I've got a recording going here separate from the Zoom recording, so I'll just try and stop it before the time runs out, and then we'll continue the conversation. But if it kicks us off, I'll jump back on. Same link, if that works. So anyways, they go out west, come back strong, come back more plentiful than they went out. You place the bees again, start the whole process over again. Talk about the marketing side of it, the harvesting of the honey. How often does that happen? What are the tools necessary to do that? Where does it go from the comb, if that's even the right term? and then what walk me through some of that.
Okay, so we'll start harvesting honey in, I would say, mid-June, and you get the best honey early, lighter colored honey. Basswood in the spring is really good stuff. It's got a little minty flavor to it. And as you progress through the summer, the honey gets a little, not lower quality, but a less appealing flavor. We end the year with goldenrod honey in September, so that stuff crystallizes real bad, and so that's a little less desirable. But so we start extracting in mid-June. Basically, you go out to the bees and you establish that this box is full of capped honey, so it's ready to pull off the bees. Take it home, cut the cappings off, which you can do with a regular bread knife. And then we put it in a honey extractor, and those come anywhere from a 2-frame extractor from your local Tractor Supply for $150 to they make like 100-frame extractors that cost like $10,000-$20,000. But we leave the honey in a bulk tank for a few days to let any air bubbles rise to the top, any wax particles rise to the top. But we don't actually heat it or alter it in any way. And we bottle it and we market most of ours ourselves. I've actually recently purchased a vending machine to market our honey with, because I can't stand to go to farmers markets. It just feels like a waste of time to me. Or you get me talking to people and I can talk to people, but I'm a little shy or stand back at the beginning. So to me, if I can get a vending machine in a good location and sell our honey out of it, that almost becomes passive income, because just like anything else in agricultural, the market price of honey is like $3 a pound, and I'm marketing it myself for $8. So it's worth doing a little work to get it sold yourself.
Yeah. So you mentioned the vending machine. Talk a little bit about that. What goes into, there's a video I think I can embed in the show notes page from your TikTok that we can show people what that's all about. What are you doing with the vending machine? What goes in there, and how are people getting access to it, and some of those things?
So we're starting off with a mobile vending machine. It's mounted in the side of an enclosed trailer that's fully wrapped with a honey theme. And the trailer only accepts credit card currently. The concept from that was then no one has an excuse to break into it. The credit card company so far seems really slow to work with. So at some point we may take that back out and put a cash receiver back in, but we'll see how that plays out. But my goal is to move this trailer from location to location about every other week, with about 10 stops. So it'll be a constant loop. And if we can identify some locations that are doing really well, I wouldn't hesitate one bit to buy another vending machine to put permanently at that spot. And we don't have it quite online yet. Honestly, I've been dragging my feet because it's so cold here. I figured nobody wants to get out of their cars in this cold weather anyway. But I really look forward to how passive of an operation it should be. I should really only have to go out there once every other week and restock it and move it.
Your TikTok video, you said you're moving, or that you're also selling syrup. Is that right?
Yeah, we're hoping to put maple syrup through the machine as well.
Is that a partnership with somebody else?
Yeah, so we do maple syrup on our family farm, but all I do is tap the trees and I take it to a friend who boils it on shares. So this last year was our first year doing maple syrup, and I wanted to keep my overheads low, so just focused on the sap production and let someone else worry about boiling.
Gotcha. So
we've got a little farms.
Yeah, go ahead.
We've got a little farm store at our place that we direct market our meat and products out of. And, with the honey, it's kind of not to call my customers a pain in the butt, but, I can't run my life around selling a $8 bottle of honey. I can't run home and meet with someone to sell them an $8 bottle of honey. It's just not going to, not feasible. But, so as far as the farm store goes, we sell a lot of 50-pound boxes of meat out of it, and that works great. It's worth meeting with someone for that. But with the honey, I needed to find something that was a little more hands-off approach.
Yeah, and so it's honey is a good add-on when you're direct marketing meat already, but it's not a great standalone enterprise, maybe.
Yeah. You get people to buy a 50-pound box by throwing in a free honey if they buy 50 pounds, or bundle things together. It gets people to try all your products, I guess.
Sure. And what meats are you direct marketing through the farm store?
Beef, pork, lamb, and then we have our honey and maple syrup. But we're actually on a break from the pigs right now. This last year here, the pig marketing was pretty slow. I think everybody had stocked up the summer before with COVID and hoarded a bunch. So we're taking a break from pigs right at this moment, and we still have a fair amount of inventory we got to get moved. But
sure.
And we don't sell a lot of lamb out of the store on purpose, because I can make a living selling lamb through the sale barn.
Right.
Whereas beef and pork, you talk about selling at the sale barn, and it frustrates me. And I really don't think it's honest prices anymore. Sure. But with sheep, that's one of the reasons we've really gone towards sheep at this point, is because I wouldn't have to do the marketing.
Sure.
We can justify raising it and selling it through the sale barn, and it's done.
Right. Yep. What's the business of acquiring and producing meat, beef for market? What's that part of your enterprise mix look like?
Number one, we sell any of our cull cows through this as ground beef. I will keep the brisket back because they seem to sell, but I don't really want to sell steaks out of a used cow. But ground beef is by far our most popular, easy to sell beef product. I run out of ground beef a lot sooner than I run out of steak, and I sell our steak for $10 a pound in the grocery store. It's more than that, but it's still a harder sale. But we do finish a few of our own cattle out on pasture, and then we'll sell those as a half and a whole, or however people want to buy them.
So you've maintained a beef herd, a cow-calf herd, a sheep, you and lamb herd, and the pigs you're out of them now, but you might get back into them. Is that right?
Yeah, we're currently out of the pigs. I've thought about the bed pack that the sheep are on right now in the spring when we take the lambs off that. I thought about putting pigs in on that to compost it down a little bit, maybe make a little less work to get that manure out of the barn. But beef right now, the big frustration is butcher appointments. The 4 main meat lockers that I use are all booked out solid, and I can't get appointments. So if we want butcher appointments this next year, we're going to have to take the animals an hour away, and that's not crazy appealing either. But it is what it is. It's part of the game at this point, I guess.
Yeah, so I guess it's just an interesting mix of enterprises. Which one are you probably most? You sounds like you're most excited about expanding on the beef side, or what are some of the advantages on the bee side, on the honey side? What are some of the advantages and disadvantages of each of those enterprises, and how are you guys thinking about the future of them?
So I've picked the honeybees because they're the least stressful. I got nobody hanging over my shoulder with them. No, there's no weekend vet calls. They're really low stress. Nobody ever complains that my bees are out in their cornfield. If they'd get out, there's no fence to fix. And the bees are nice because there's a continuous cash flow. In the spring, I get that check from the almond pollination, and then I sell honeybees to the hobbyists. And then next thing you know, I'm selling honey, and that honey sales takes me through winter, and there's just a constant flow of cash. Which has always been a frustration with my corn or my grain farming, is the second you spend that money in April, May, you cannot pull a single cent back out of that crop until November. And, what if there, at some point I want to buy my family farm, and it sounds like I have to wait till my grandpa passes on in order to do that. Well, you can't schedule that in on a predictable date. So if I'm fully invested in a crop of corn and I can't pull a dime out of it, that's not very convenient.
Sure.
But the sheep are the next most appealing to me because my wife and kids can be a little more involved with them than the cattle. My kids can run out to the sheep pen and pick up a baby lamb and have their fun with it. And sheep, if you're carrying a 5-gallon bucket, they'll follow you. Good luck. Half of my cows are pretty tame, but some of them turn around, run the other way. And when you go out there, and honestly, those ones eventually are going to be going away probably, but
volunteer hamburger.
Yeah. Our at this point, I'd say our beef herd is more of us just keep them because I want to keep them, and they can stay the size they are because like I say, we tried to expand the beef last year, and running cows on seven different pastures just wasn't worth it to me. I had 7 different pastures, and at the most they'd hold 15 cows, and it just, then next thing you know, you need that many bulls and that much fly control, and it doesn't work. So I'm holding on to the cows I like at this point, and hopefully at some point I can find a sizable lease to put them out on. But, at some point, if for some reason we wouldn't acquire the family farm, I'd probably entertain moving to Missouri because you see a little bigger tracts of land down there, and they still have good grass. And, we had the discussion, we don't really want to move north any further than we are. So that almost eliminates the Dakotas. So,
Yep.
And there's no pasture in Iowa from what I've seen.
Right. And you'd run into a lot of the same things in eastern South Dakota that you're running into there in Wisconsin, as far as smaller tracts of land, no fence, and then western South Dakota it's drove Steve Kenyon through here last week, and he said, this looks like the desert to me. And it sparked a thought in my head that actually, we get 15 inches of rain a year, but that doesn't really matter. What matters is what you can keep. And so technically I live in a desert that gets 15 inches of rain because we don't keep all 15 inches of rain. We might keep 9 of it because our soil isn't healthy yet. And so if you live in a 9-inch rainfall zone, you live in a desert. So that's, kind of been a paradigm shift for me in the last week or so, is thinking about how do I treat this land if I want it to, keep all the rain I get. And I'm going to have to start treating it more like a desert for the first few years to get some of that litter built up and the soil health cranking so that we can use all the rain we get.
I think back at Ranching for Profit, my classmates thought I was stupid or crazy that, in Wisconsin here, we're honestly worried about getting too much rain. We've had so many floods the last decade. It's unreal. We've had 2 100-year floods within 8 years of each other. And, for us, it's too much rain. We seldomly have a shortage. And even at that, every winter you get a foot of snow, which resets it.
Right. Yep. No. And I'm sure that the amount of land that got tilled into row crops over the last few years has nothing to do with having 2 100-year floods within 8 years of each other.
You don't realize how much soil you lose until you're out there with a skid steer trying to fill in ruts. And then it opens your eyes. And you look at that happening every year on everyone's side hills on their farm. And in my opinion, it's not so much that the flooding is getting worse. The swamps are getting full of sediment, and the water is just going that much further. The level of downtown hasn't changed, but the level of the swamp next to town has. So,
right. I don't know.
Getting a little further in.
Right. I don't know who counted or how they counted, but I've heard it said that America's #1 agricultural export every year is topsoil. You look at the Missouri River Delta or the Mississippi River Delta, and you look at, some of the other places where you can kind of see that actually happening. And it starts to maybe look like that's probably true. There's another place that I can't remember which is which, but I think it's where the Minnesota River dumps into the Mississippi River, just on the south edge of the Twin Cities. The Minnesota River comes in brown because it's out of crop land, and the Mississippi River comes in blue because it's out of trees and and grass, I guess. And another area where you can kind of see those two things coming together.
Gabe Brown is going to speak locally here February 8th, and I look forward to going to see him speak. I've watched all his stuff on YouTube, and he's great to listen to, but his standpoint of tillage wrecking your organic matter, which ultimately changes your water absorption, really holds true in all this too, because you look at how many acres of cropland that have crap for organic matter at this point. That's a game changer too in all this.
Sure. Yeah. Well, and there's another one of my more recent paradigm shifts. I had two people who are very respected in this industry in the last week say the same thing to me, that if it came down to tilling or spraying a herbicide or a pesticide, they'd spray the chemical before they would till, because the carbon on the surface is so important. You cannot sacrifice that for anything. And so, just another one of those paradigm shifts, continually learning and growing and having that perspective broadened, I guess. So interesting stuff. We have touched on a lot of different things here today. If somebody's looking to get into bees, what are some resources that you would recommend them seeking out and making available to themselves?
YouTube University. There's a few people on there that really know their stuff. Vino Farm was a really good guy I followed for a long time. He doesn't post a ton of content anymore. The Honeystead is a woman with a beautiful voice. You could just listen to her and lower your blood pressure. And then Cayman Reynolds is a pretty interesting personality. I think he's in Kentucky. Them are the three guys I watch on YouTube. But yeah, that's pretty well where I've learned everything from. I mean, a little bit from some other beekeepers, but for the most part, YouTube University hooked me up. So
very good. Yep, powerful tool. Good to be able to good to make use of it. And I will put links to all of that in the show notes page for today, workingcows.net/230. workingcows.net/230 is the show notes page for today. Anything else that we missed? Anything we didn't get covered? Anything else you wanted to dive in on a little bit deeper?
I would just like to throw Sage Askin under the bus and call him out that he needs to get on one of these episodes, because he's such a positive, upbeat guy that can make a deal on anything. He could sell, as far as acquiring leases, from what I've seen, he could sell snow to an Eskimo. So I'd really like to hear him on one of these shows. Well,
you'll get your wish on Monday after we're recording this. His episode is coming out regarding using Peruvian herders. So episode 226 is going to be my episode with Sage Askin. So, or by the time people are listening to this, you can check out workingcows.net/226 for Sage's episode if you missed it. But Brad, appreciate your time today. Thank you very much for joining me.
Yeah, thank you. Have a good one.
Well, good to take a deep dive there with Brad and talk about his Honeybee enterprise. Really enjoyed that opportunity. Coming up next week on the Working Cows podcast, very excited to kick off a 2-part series. The first part is going to be with Dr. Tom Knopfsinger, and the second part is going to be with Steve Cody. And we're going to talk to these two guys who have been influenced by Bud Williams about stockmanship. We're going to start off by talking to Dr. Tom Knopfsinger about getting a herd started, getting them up in the morning and moving towards a set of corrals, and how do we work with them to maintain that maternal function, and about the bottom line benefits of good stockmanship. And then we're going to pick that conversation up the next week with Steve Cody, and we're going to talk to him about how, once we've gotten them in the corral, how are we going to interact with them to keep them stress-free and some of those things. And really, really looking forward to sharing these two conversations with you over the next 2 weeks. Some of my most favorite conversations on the Working Cows podcast. I've been really enjoyed these two guys and what they had to say. So really enjoying the podcast. Really been fun to continue to just challenge my own paradigms and expand my horizons. If you've been enjoying it, Appreciate subscribing for free, of course, on any of the podcast apps that you would be using, whether that is Apple Podcasts or Spotify or Stitcher or any of the others that are out there. And subscribing, and if they have a rating and review, if you can leave a rating and a review on those various platforms, that is good as well. Appreciate that. And if you can share it with just one person, send them a link. Let them know about one of the episodes that was particularly impactful to you. And it's easy to share, workingcows.net/the episode number, and it'll take you directly to that place where they can listen to it, download it, and find all the relevant links for it. So subscribe, rate, review, and share if you can. Appreciate it. Thank you guys for tuning in, and we'll see you again real soon with another episode of the Working Cows Podcast.
We invite you to visit workingcows.net to subscribe to the show via iTunes or Stitcher. You'll also find detailed show notes pages, resources from our guests, and the industry leaders who have influenced them. For more ideas on putting your cows to work for you in a more profitable way, tune in next week.